My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, then secretly drained our joint account of $250, $0 to buy a luxury yacht. Now she's suing me for half the property I built from scratch. I never saw the betrayal coming. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, pouring out my guts about how my wife, Jessica, turned out to be a complete nightmare. Honestly, I thought we had a good thing going, married for 10 years, building a life together, and I thought she was the one. She was always a little bitchy, sure, but I chalked it up to her being high maintenance. Little did I know, beneath that facade, she was hiding a whole different life. It all started about 2 months ago. At first, I just noticed small things: her phone buzzing constantly at odd hours, her sneaking off to work meetings that lasted way too long. She'd come home with a strange glint in her eye, and her stories about her day didn't add up. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just stressed or maybe having an affair with that guy from her yoga class. But deep down, I felt something was off. Then one night, I decided to check her phone. I know that's not exactly noble, but I'd been suspicious for a while and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I waited until she was asleep, snuck into her purse and found a series of texts that made my stomach turn. It was her, clearly with someone else. The messages were flirty, intimate, and explicit. The guy was her neighbor, Mark, a guy I'd always kind of disliked. He's a sleazy little shit, always hitting on her when he thought I wasn't looking. The texts made it obvious. They'd been sleeping together for months. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My wife, the woman I trusted with everything, was cheating on me with our neighbor, for God's sake. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I couldn't believe I'd been blind to it for so long. How could she lie to my face every day, pretend everything was normal while she was sneaking around behind my back? I confronted her the next morning. I showed her the texts and her face twisted into this bitchy sneer. "Oh, come on, Steve. It's not. What you think, it's just sex. It doesn't mean anything. You're overreacting," she said, rolling her eyes like I was the crazy one. She told me I was paranoid, that Mark was just a friend and that I was imagining things. But I wasn't stupid. I saw the way she looked at him, flirty, predatory, like she was craving something she wasn't getting from me. She then spun some ridiculous story about how I'd been neglecting her, working too much, not paying enough attention. She claimed I was jealous, insecure, and that I was the one to blame, but I knew better. I knew she was lying. She'd always been good at that, lying, manipulating, making me doubt myself. I felt like I was losing my mind. The emotional roller coaster hit me hard. I went from shock to anger in a matter of minutes. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this after everything we'd built? I felt this intense pain, like I'd been punched in the chest, and then a burning rage took over. I wanted to tear her apart, wanted to make her feel what I was feeling. But I also felt helpless, confused, and totally betrayed. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, the lies, the sneaking around, the way she looked at Mark. I wondered how long this had been going on, how many nights she'd spent with him instead of me. I thought about the money too, how she'd always been obsessed with appearances, with luxury, with keeping up this perfect image. And then I found out about the money. Turns out, she drained our joint account of $250, $0 just like that, to buy a yacht she'd been dreaming about. She didn't even tell me. She just took it secretly and started planning her escape. I was furious. That money was supposed to be for our future, our kids, our house, our retirement. Instead, she used it to fund her affair, to buy her happiness with that sleazy neighbor, Mark. I couldn't believe she'd do that. And the worst part, she was so brazen about it. She'd lie to my face, pretend to be innocent, then go off with Mark and spend my hard-earned money on some luxury vessel that she'd never even let me see. I knew then I had to do something. This wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the principle. She lied, cheated, stolen from me, and now she was trying to take half of everything I'd built from scratch. I'd worked my ass off to build that house, that business, our entire life. And she thought she could just walk in, drain our accounts, and take her cut. Not a chance. That's when I started planning my revenge. I wasn't going to confront her again without a plan. I had to find out everything, how deep her lies went, what she was planning with that yacht, and how much damage she'd done. I needed to be ready for whatever was coming. That's the story so far. This betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm just trying to figure out my next move. After I found out about the money and her affair, everything in my world felt like it was collapsing. The house I built from the ground up, the business I poured my soul into, everything suddenly seemed fragile, vulnerable, like it could all shatter at any moment. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to drain our account of $250, $0, then turn around and act like she was the victim. That yacht she was. Obsessing over. She'd been secretly financing it with money I didn't even know was missing. I started digging into things, trying to understand just how deep her lies went. I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do in my life, but I was desperate. I wasn't about to let her walk away with everything, including my hard-earned property, without a fight. The Pi found out she'd been meeting Mark at a marina, testing out yachts, planning her escape route. She was serious about leaving me, and I realized I couldn't let her get away with it. In the meantime, my head was spinning. I kept replaying the betrayal, the lies, the way she'd lied to my face so effortlessly. I felt like I was losing my mind. It was like she'd turned into this completely different person, someone I didn't even recognize. Her bitchy attitude had turned into outright contempt. She'd call me paranoid, insecure, accuse me of being controlling. All the while she was out there, cheating on me and draining our savings. I started to think about revenge, not just emotional revenge, but something a bit more calculated. I knew I had to hit her. Where it hurt, especially with that yacht. That yacht was her dream, her escape plan. If I could somehow stop her, expose her, or even take control of that situation, I'd have a chance to turn the tables. I found out she'd been using a fake name to buy the yacht, and she'd hidden the registration in her sister's name. That gave me an idea. I decided I needed to get legal. I hired a lawyer, one who specialized in divorce and asset protection. I wanted to make sure she couldn't just walk away with half of everything I'd built. I also started gathering evidence, texts, emails, bank statements, anything that could prove her deception and theft. I knew she was planning to sue me for half the property, claiming she was entitled to it because she was contributing in her own twisted way. But I had the proof that I'd financed and built everything myself. One night, I confronted her again. I told her I knew about the affair, about the money, and about the yacht. She scoffed at me, called me paranoid, said I was blowing things out of proportion. She even had the audacity to say I was the one cheating on her, that I was jealous and insecure. That made me laugh bitterly. The only thing I was guilty of was trusting her, and that trust was shattered beyond repair. Her reaction was classic. She started to lie even more, spinning stories about how she'd been unhappy, how I was neglecting her, how I'd never really loved her. She told me I was a terrible husband, a workaholic who never paid attention to her. But I saw through it. All her lies, all her manipulation, they'd only made me more determined. I knew she was planning her big escape, and I couldn't let her get away with it. The real shock came when I discovered she'd been secretly draining the joint account for months. I had no idea she'd taken so much money, $250, gone just like that. I checked the bank statements, and there it was, withdrawals, transfers, all under the radar. She'd been funneling money into offshore accounts, buying the yacht and planning her getaway. I felt sick. I'd worked so hard to make everything perfect, and she'd just stolen from me. That's when I decided I'd fight back hard. I couldn't let her just walk away with half of my property, with my life's work. I was going to expose her, stop her from taking the yacht, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, not without a fight. I started planning how to freeze her accounts, how to get control of the yacht, and how to prepare for the inevitable legal battle. Right now, I'm just trying to keep my head straight. I feel betrayed, angry, and hurt more than I ever thought possible. But I also know I have to be smart. I can't let her manipulate her way out of this. I've got evidence, I've got a lawyer, and I've got a plan. The next step is confronting her officially, and I'm ready. I just hope I can get through this without losing everything I've worked so hard for. So, after I gathered enough evidence and hired the right lawyer, I knew I had to act fast. Jessica was already planning her escape, and I didn't want her to slip away with everything. especially that yacht she'd been obsessing over. The more I dug into her plans, the clearer it became that she was trying to hide her tracks, but I had enough to turn the tables. I decided the best move was to file for a legal freeze on all her accounts and assets, including the yacht registration she'd secretly set up under her sister's name. I met with my lawyer, Mark, a no-nonsense guy who knew exactly how to handle these kinds of cases. We went over everything: her affair, the stolen money, the fake yacht registration, and her plans to sue me for half the property. I told him I wanted to make sure she couldn't withdraw any more money, transfer assets, or sell that yacht without my knowledge. Mark advised me to get a court order to freeze her accounts immediately and to start the process of claiming full ownership of the yacht, especially since she'd been using my money to fund it. Meanwhile, I started making moves on my own. I contacted the marina where she'd been testing out yachts and got the details on the registration. Turns out she'd used a fake name, but I had enough info to trace it back to her sister's account. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her whereabouts. I wanted to know exactly what she was doing and where she was planning to go. The PI found out she'd been talking about leaving town, maybe even heading abroad with the yacht. That was the moment I realized I had to act even faster. Jessica, of course, was still acting like everything was fine. She'd throw tantrums, accuse me of being paranoid, and pretend she was the victim. She kept insisting she was just stressed, that I was overreacting, and that I was trying to control her. She even lied about the affair, claiming Mark was just a friend who was helping her with her yacht plans. Yeah, right. I saw through all her bullshit. I knew she was lying, and I was furious. One day, I caught her trying to transfer more money out of our joint account. She was on her phone, frantically typing away, trying to move funds into some offshore account. I snapped and confronted her right there. I told her I had already filed the court papers, that her accounts were frozen, and that she wasn't going anywhere. Her face turned white, and she started yelling at me, calling me controlling and paranoid. But I didn't care anymore. She had crossed the line. She'd stolen from me, betrayed me, and tried to run away with my property. That night she went into a full-blown meltdown. She screamed at me, called me every name in the book, and even accused me of cheating on her. I just stared at her, feeling a mixture of disgust and sadness. I couldn't believe how far she'd gone, how she'd turned into this manipulative, lying bitch. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. She'd lied so much. I didn't even know who she was. The next day, I went to the court to get the order to freeze her assets officially. The judge issued it within hours. That meant she couldn't touch a dime or sell that yacht until everything was sorted out. I also started preparing my case to claim full ownership of the property and to get her out of the house if necessary. I was finally taking control of the situation, but it didn't make it any easier emotionally. Inside, I felt broken, like I'd lost a part of myself. Throughout all this, I kept thinking about how she'd lied, manipulated, and betrayed me for months. How she'd drained our savings secretly, bought a yacht, and plotted her escape while pretending everything was fine. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, but the truth is I was blindsided. I thought I knew her, but she turned into someone I barely recognized. The betrayal cut deep. It's like she took everything I worked for, my trust, my happiness, my future, and turned it into something ugly. Now I'm just waiting for the legal process to run its course. I've got her cornered, and I'm ready for the final showdown. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I won't let her get away with it. I'll fight to keep what's mine and to make sure she pays for the pain she's caused. The next step is the court hearing, and I'm determined to come out on top. I've learned a lot about trust, deception, and how far some people will go when they're desperate. But I also learned I have to be smarter, stronger, and more prepared than ever before. By the time the court date rolled around, I was a mess of nerves and anger. I knew Jessica was going to try everything to spin the story in her favor. She always did. She's good at lying, at twisting things around and making herself look like the victim. But I had all the evidence on my side now: texts, bank statements, the PI reports. I was ready to fight for everything I deserved. The courtroom was tense. Jessica sat there with her usual bitchy expression, dressed to impress but with a nervous edge I hadn't seen before. Mark was nowhere in sight, probably hiding out, knowing he'd be called as a witness if this went any further. My lawyer laid out the case, showing how Jessica had been draining our joint account, secretly buying that yacht and planning her escape with Mark. I could see her trying to maintain her composure, but I knew she was panicking inside. When it was my turn to speak, I laid it all out. How I'd built our house with my own sweat, how she'd stolen from us, and how she'd been lying about everything. I told the court about her affair with Mark, how she'd been sneaking around, and how she'd used my money to fund her lavish plans. I emphasized how I'd tried to confront her, how she'd lied and gaslit me. Every step of the way. I saw her glare at me, a mixture of hatred and fear, but I didn't care. I had the truth and I was ready to fight for it. The judge listened carefully, asked a few questions, and then made the ruling. It was a victory. She was ordered to return the stolen money, and her assets were to be divided fairly. The court also froze her accounts, and the yacht was declared part of the marital property, subject to division. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Jessica's face was tight, and I could see her trying to maintain her bitchy composure, but I knew she was furious inside. After the court session, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I'd done everything I could to protect what I'd built, and now I just had to wait for the final paperwork. But the worst was still ahead. Jessica wasn't going down without a fight. I knew she'd try to appeal or worse, come after me with some new scheme. I had to stay alert, keep my guard up, and make sure she didn't find a way to ruin me further. In the weeks that followed, I started to focus on rebuilding myself. I moved out of the house temporarily into a rental nearby so she couldn't manipulate me anymore. I also began setting up my own financial safeguards, closing joint accounts, opening new ones in my name, and hiring a security detail to monitor her movements. I realized how naive I'd been to trust her so blindly. She'd been lying to my face for months, and I'd been too blind to see it. Jessica, of course, wasn't taking the loss lightly. She was furious, throwing tantrums, trying to guilt-trip me and accusing me of ruining her life. But I saw through her act now. She's always been good at playing the victim, but I knew the truth. She's a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could cheat, steal, and lie her way out of everything. Now she was facing the consequences. One thing that hit me hard was how she kept insisting she was the real victim, how I'd been controlling and neglectful, how she deserved half of everything because she contributed in her own way. That's when I realized how warped her sense of reality was. She lied so much. She believed her own bullshit. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I also learned some tough lessons. Trust is fragile, and some people will do anything to get what they want. Money can corrupt even the most seemingly stable relationships. I've come to understand that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect yourself. Jessica's betrayal was a wake-up call. I'll never let myself be blind again. Right now, I'm just trying to pick up the pieces. The legal battle isn't over yet, but I feel more in control than I have in months. I know I'll get through this, even if it's hard. I've lost a lot, but I've also gained clarity. I realize that I need to focus on my own healing, rebuild what's broken, and never let anyone manipulate me like that again. The pain is still there, but I'm learning to live with it. I just hope that someday I can finally move past this and find some peace. The months that followed were a blur of legal battles, sleepless nights, and trying to piece my life back together. Jessica kept pushing her narrative, trying to paint herself as the victim in all of this. She'd call me names, accuse me of controlling her, and insist that I was the one who betrayed her. But I knew the real story, and every time she lied or threw a tantrum, it only strengthened my resolve to see this through. I managed to get full legal control of the yacht. It was a victory, but not without its complications. Jessica had hidden its registration in her sister's name, and it took months of legal maneuvering to finally get it back into my possession. The yacht was a symbol of her betrayal, her secret plan to escape, her obsession with luxury, and her greed. I had it docked in a secure marina, and I made sure it was under my watch. I didn't trust her not to try something sneaky again. Meanwhile, she was still trying to manipulate the situation. She filed a counter-lawsuit, claiming I'd been abusive and controlling, an obvious lie. I had proof of her draining our accounts, her affair with Mark, and her secret plans to leave. But her accusations were designed to distract, to keep the focus off her wrongdoing. I stayed calm, let my lawyer handle everything, and focused on the facts. I also took steps to rebuild my financial security. I closed all joint accounts, opened new ones solely in my name, and hired a financial advisor to help me protect what was left. I realized how vulnerable I'd been, trusting her blindly, thinking she was the woman I married. Now I understood that sometimes the only person you can rely on is yourself. One of the hardest things was dealing with the emotional fallout. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. I'd poured so much into that marriage, my time, my money, my dreams, and she'd thrown it all away for some sleazy neighbor and a luxury yacht. The pain still lingers, but I'm learning to accept it. I've started therapy to process everything, to forgive myself for trusting her so blindly, and to move forward. Jessica's bitchy attitude didn't change much. She still tried to guilt-trip me, calling me a terrible husband, saying I was controlling her life. But I could see through her lies now. She's always been manipulative, and her tears and accusations are just her way of trying to regain control. I refuse to let her manipulate me anymore. I've learned that you can't fix someone like her. She's too far gone in her own lies and greed. The final blow came when the court officially divided the property. Jessica got a fraction of what she thought she was entitled to, but I kept the house, the business, and most of what I'd worked for. That was the moment I realized I'd won the war, even if I'd lost the battle of trust. I felt a strange sense of closure, knowing I'd fought for everything I believed was right. Now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. I've moved into a new place, started dating again, and trying to forget the nightmare that Jessica turned into. I've learned a lot about myself, about how I need to set boundaries, trust my instincts, and never let someone manipulate me again. I don't regret fighting for what's mine, even if it costs me emotionally. Sometimes, you have to go through hell to come out stronger on the other side. Looking back, I see how much I was blindsided by her lies. I trusted her because I loved her, but love isn't enough when someone is willing to betray you so thoroughly. I want everyone reading this to know, if you notice the signs, don't ignore them. Trust your gut, protect yourself, and don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness or your hard work. I've learned the hard way that some people will do anything for money and luxury, even if it means destroying everything else. And if you find yourself in a situation like mine, fight. Fight hard. Because in the end, the truth always comes out and justice will catch up with those who try to cheat the system. I'm not perfect and I'm still healing. But I know one thing for sure, I'm done being the victim. I'm taking control of my life again, and I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. Looking back now, it's hard to believe how much my life changed in such a short time. I used to think I had everything under control, my marriage, my house, my career. But the moment I uncovered Jessica's betrayal, everything unraveled faster than I could keep up. I never saw it coming. The affair, the theft, the deception. It was like a knife twisting in my gut every day, but I had to keep going, had to find a way to survive all of it. The hardest part was realizing how much I'd trusted her, how naive I'd been. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how she was able to hide so much from me for so long. But the truth is, people can be masters at hiding their true selves. Jessica was a classic manipulator, bitchy, selfish, and utterly dishonest. She lied about everything, even the small stuff, and I was too blinded by love and hope to see it. Now, after everything, settled legally and financially, I feel a strange sense of relief mixed with anger. I got back the yacht, the house, and most of what I worked so hard for. Jessica's out of my life for good, and I've finally started to rebuild from the ashes. I've learned that sometimes you have to go through hell to find your strength. That trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. So I refuse to ever let myself be that blind again. I want to tell anyone reading this, if you ever suspect your partner is hiding something, don't ignore it. Trust your instincts, protect your assets, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Because when someone is determined to betray you, no amount of love or hope can stop them. Only action, evidence, and a willingness to stand your ground. As for me, I'm still healing. I've started therapy, reconnected with friends, and slowly I'm letting go of the pain. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I won't let it define me. I'm stronger now, more cautious, but also more hopeful. I believe that one day I'll find happiness again, better, wiser, and more aware of what real trust means. Most importantly, I've learned that justice isn't always pretty, and sometimes you have to fight dirty just to get what's right. Jessica thought she could manipulate her way out of this, but the truth always catches up. And when it does, you have to be ready to face it, no matter how painful. That's what I did, and I'm proud of it. This experience has changed me forever, but I refuse to let it break me. Instead, I'll take what I've learned and build a better future. One where honesty, loyalty, and integrity matter more than wealth, lies, and betrayal. Because in the end, that's what truly counts.